What's going on, ladies and gents? It's your boy FGC Gamma, and I'm here. I have a highly esteemed guest. I'm super excited. All smiles because we have in the house the man, the myth, the legend himself. Yes, Mr. Street Fighter. Help me and welcome and give him a warm welcome, Mr. Alex Valle. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Hey, doing great, man. Appreciate you having me here, and I was just in Atlanta, and it's becoming somewhat of another home now for the times that I've been back there. So
you're right about that, man. I seen you at ELEAGUE recently. I seen you at Fighting Around. I got like a little glimpse. Seen you last year Fighting Around. I mean, gosh, you travel all the time, man. And thanks to the FGC and all that, the stuff that you do within the scene, of course, you get to see a lot of sights and sounds. And, we're going to hop right into this discussion, man. And I know this is a question you've probably been asked only about 1 million times, but you can elaborate as much as you want. And it doesn't have to be just FGC related. Let's go ahead and start off for like the few people who don't know who you are. Who is Alex Valle? Please tell us.
Oh, wow. Okay, so, yeah, I do get this question a lot, and it's crazy because I've been in the scene for such a long time. Some of the old school cats know me as like the old, championship player,
right?
And then the new school cats is just like, oh, it's Uncle Valle. So let's start from the beginning and go to the end. So yeah, yes. From I would say 1996 to about early 2000s, I was the U.S. national fighting game champion in various titles. Okay. Predominantly Street Fighter, but I've also was the Tekken Tag national champion. And, at the time, there was no eSports or any structured type events to put them in any circuit. So I was just winning all the events, kind of like you would see Justin Wong when he would clean house in a lot of those tournaments. I was one of the first ones to do that in the arcade generation before Justin came in. So going all the way today, now I'm a bit more refined, a bit more seasoned. I don't play in various tournaments like that anymore, of course. But now I've transitioned into the event organizer, community outreach, training, consulting, and stuff like that with not just me, but with my co-founders at Level Up, which is I am co-founder of. We do event organizations. We do broadcasting too. Some of our flagship events are Wednesday Night Fights, SoCal Regionals, Vanguard. Those are the Red Bull Proving Grounds event, and the CPT online circuit, which we also do for Level Up. So this is a team effort. It's not just me. I'm mainly the face of it, but there's my business partner Jimmy Wynn. There is Frank Reyes. We all tackle all these projects together and bring them out to life. So that's where we are today. And luckily, I was chosen to be part of ELEAGUE as an analyst on the desk. So, I'm always trying out new things and again, seeing what works best for the community moving forward.
Absolutely, man. Yes, and you do quite a bit. I'm sure you didn't even touch on everything. You just kind of gave us a quick run through. So, absolutely. When it comes to Street Fighter, because you are called Mr. Street Fighter now. When did you first fall in love with it? It seemed like everyone has a different story, whether it was they spent their lunch money at the arcades. When was your first encounter, and when did you first fall in love with it?
All right. Well, I was an arcade rat even as a little kid. My folks used to take me to the arcades, and I would play all these single-player games because none of the games you would play together, or you would just play for points. Right. And it was I don't know, a random day. I went to the 7-Eleven, and then I just saw a crowd on a machine, and it happened to be on Street Fighter. I'm like, what's going on, right? And I'm, given I'm 13 years old at the time, all right. I'm like a dinosaur now with the gamer age, but back then it was 1991, 92, and I'm like, wow, this is hot, because every time. You run an errand for your folks, you got to go get change. You got to, get something at the convenience store, come back. Always got to stop by to see what arcade games were at your 7-Eleven, your pizza store. I remember
those days. It takes 40 minutes to get milk, right?
So I'm like, oh man, this is crazy, right? I haven't seen this many people there, and it was an arcade game. You played together.
Okay, so you referred to it as the age of discovery. And I'm glad that you mentioned that statement because, I did a little research and I watched a ton of your interviews. And there was an interview, I think it was, I want to say 2012. Let's see if I can find a quote. You mentioned something that was very interesting that stuck with me. You said that there was a lot more dedication pre-internet. You can't copy, and you had to build everything on your own. You had to be a pure innovator. So that stuck out to me. And then, you just talked about the arcade days. How sometimes the moves weren't even really written on the machine at that time, in certain instances. So you literally had to just be in a lab and practicing. So what are your thoughts on that statement? Like, does it still hold true? Do you feel like the internet is a gift and a curse as maybe it watered down the competition? Or, I'd like to know where you stand at when it comes to that.
Okay, so there's a few ways to look at the age of discovery. It's the old story that, we used to climb through hills and mountains to get to school, and we had to figure it out on our own, right? Mm-hmm. But there will always be those people. No matter what hobby or sport, you will always have the talented ninjas out there that are just ahead of the curve, just constantly pushing. And that's just their gift, their talent, right?
Right.
Now that the internet is out there, you still have those people, but the information is spread out that much quicker, right? So there are going to be a group of then the followers. There's always been followers, like the guys peeking over the guy figuring things out and then trying it on his own, right? That guy sometimes picks up on things and makes it better, but most of the time it's just like you said, it's a watered down version, and he's not really, he's not the innovator of it. So there's a cap of how if anybody can figure out a strategy to beat it, while the other guy is constantly trying to beat his own strat. That's why he invented it.
Exactly.
So a gift and a curse, I wouldn't really put it that way. I would say internet has made it possible for more accessibility, so people can figure out the games faster. That way we can get higher quality matches. Right? Because I can say without a doubt, when people are learning games off the jump, with no information and are just kind of flailing around, that sucked because you thought okay, just because I knew a couple things and the other guy was trying to figure out the stuff, it just took him that much longer to figure it out. Right. And that was and for a lot of the good players, they were annoyed by that. They kind of man, why do these guys suck so bad? But because the information wasn't given to them. So now here we are, information is out there. There's so many good players these days, and that's the result of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I agree with that. I can imagine people trying to figure out what plinking is without the internet. So a lot of these terms and a lot of these strategies probably wouldn't be readily available without the internet. It would take ages for the non-pros to catch up.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine if we had the internet widely used and we were figuring out World Warrior at the same time. Right? Man. We would have figured out that game was broken within a few weeks, right?
But people been a boycott outside Captain.
Yeah, they would have been hey, what's going on, man? Why is this guy handcuffing me to this character? That's broken. What's going on? Yeah.
That's another good point you bring out too, because without the internet, we were forced to just deal with whatever we had. Whatever was given to us, we had to manage it. Yeah. So and speaking of pre-internet though, I just want you to touch on this. I know this is a topic you probably touched on a lot. Your infamous 1998 face-off with Daigo Umehera. I mean, you guys are two of the most legendary players, and you seem to always face each other almost at least once a year.
Alex Valle. Hi, how you doing? What's up?
How was it the very first time you faced off against Daigo? What did you know about him at the time? Was he well known, maybe only to a small circle of people? What were your feelings and thoughts going in? If you can kind of just reminisce on that.
Yeah, there was no data on any international player at the time. It was just you and your peers, and that's the only confidence you have to go by, right? Mm-hmm. We had to really polish up all of our gimmicks, all of our strategies, and just go face forward to what we see. And I at the time, I was at a point where I could play secondaries or third tier characters to like get to the top, to the grand finals. And it did. Like I used Rolento, I used Aism Ryu. Right. But then like when I got to the grand finals, Grand Wolf, you know, I couldn't beat him with my secondary third tier character. I had to go with my best character, which was Aism Ryu.
Right.
And Daigo was watching at the time, so I knew he was watching. So I had to hold back as much information as possible because I knew how important this event was. And consider it sandbagging or not, it's more of like strategically getting to the grand finals in an international match without leaking out too much data. And we went into it, and if the tournament structure was normal, I would have won because the rounds were not traditionally 2 out of 3 rounds. They were 3 out of 5 rounds.
Oh man!
So I did stuff that Daigo didn't see, but Daigo in the long run, because he was the better player. You know, there's no doubt about that.
Right.
He adapted. And not only adapted, but showed us stuff that we've never seen before. Not just with Akuma, but with like Gen and his guy.
Right.
There were like amazing things to see. So it was a huge culture clash of like the 2 best players in their respectful regions, and it just showed Japan's adaptation, their their innovation in the game. And just the way that they can like wow the crowd, right? Because it was so intense back then. Like everybody was cheering for me, but they could not, pull back how much curiosity it was, or just how much fun it was to watch Daigo do these things I've never seen. You would hear the crowd go from Alex to like, whoa, damn, like what is this? Like I've never seen this before. So like, whoa. and that was like the spark of international rivalry, and because of that pushed me forward all these years, man. Losing that international match.
Yeah, man, and I'm glad that you said it pushed you forward, because one thing that I don't think a lot of people touch on is the fact that back in the '90s when you were playing and you were a young guy, you weren't the only one that was playing. There were other people around your age, some younger, some maybe even older, right? But it seemed like you are one of the few that actually stuck to it. A lot of guys probably faded off. I mean, life, things happen, etc. What do you think is the motivation? What's the fuel? Aside from maybe just loving the game, what kept you going and still going to this day?
The people. The like I said before, when I went to the arcade and I saw that many people, and you're playing your matches, it was like eSports in front of you. You just didn't know it. You had 2 people and you had a crowd watching. And you had excitement. It was easy to understand. It's a bunch of trash talking. It was like, who the hell is this? And then after that, that community starts talking, and you're like, man, you know what you did there? You could have done this, and people that you would never give the time of day to talk to, all of a sudden, because they enjoy Street Fighter, they're like one of your best friends. And I'm pretty sure, like a lot of the people that entered the scene met their peers, their rivals, and they're going to major tournaments across the world today because of and that's the games bring you together. Yes. But the people is the ones that like move you forward.
Absolutely. Sure. It's very interesting that you said that, man. So the people, and then another thing you said that stuck out, eSports. We're going to touch on that really briefly now. And, it's 2 things that come to mind. When it comes to eSports, well, first of all, let me say this. Like, I definitely do feel that you are one of the few people that are really deeply passionate about growing the FGC, and you are for the people. But the FGC, they seem to be very apprehensive when it comes to eSport. Even just the term. I don't know if they understand it or if there is a reason for them to kind of feel like, I don't know about the big guys coming in, etc. But you always seem to be a very progressive thinker. You're ahead of the curve. You seem to always see things maybe, you know, a few steps before everyone else sees it. So can you talk about esports and maybe why we should come around? Are we already esports? You know, we just don't know it yet. Like, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, esports has always been just like the bane of existence conversation. Yes. Like, it's just, and it comes, the reason being is because the players feel that they lose a part of their community aspect of it. Okay. Right? So think about this though. Like all the other esports organizations and their events, how they came to be, they started just like us. Well, not in an arcade, but they've started in their garages and their home lands, you know, local area network locations, and had their get-togethers. And they wanted to find out who the best players in their regions were too, just like we did. We wanted to do the same thing. Fortunately for them, they had a head start because it was easier to work with the peripheral companies and the, you know, all the PC companies, and just kind of like come together to form these sponsored events. You know, because they were making games and, you know, focusing on the graphics and their keyboards and mouse. So it was a huge push for them to start early and figuring out who the best players were. So it all makes sense. For us, we just rode the wave of like, you know what, it's so cool to go to an arcade and we can, you know, shoot and you know, and be free and not have any of these regulations. But then you know, as time progressed, people are getting older, they have their day jobs, and then they either stop playing. But there was no future for the competitive player. It was just like they're riding a wave, and it was just recycling players due to the fact that, you know, real life hits. So now we're at a point where some players took it to the extremes, like I did, and traveled. And I saw that, man, I had to get a job. You know, I have to figure out ways to sustain while going to these events. And if you're a player and if you're a spectator, like a player that or a fan that wants to watch these constant competitions, you're like, damn, I want to see more of this, but there's no way to see more of this without help. You know, and the help is from the publishers, a peripheral company, you know, right, an organization, an investor that can help make this a presentable show, right? And you know, that's what esports is progressing that movement. And it was a really bad taste in a lot of the FGC's eyes and mouths, just to see that some organizations, when they had fighting games on their shows, it was not FGC like. It would be a one match, and then it would be like half an hour to an hour of commercials. Wow. And we're like, what happened, right? And, you know, and why are like the casters so uptight? You know, they can't be themselves, or we didn't have like knowledgeable casters at the time. So it was just a lot of like, this is not what the FGC is all about. So you know, that there, of course, there was always that notion like, hey, you know, maybe esports, FGC wasn't ready for esports. It was not necessarily that. It's you know, the FGC didn't have, you know, established casters. They didn't have broadcast entities, right, that can produce shows of that caliber yet. We have to constantly work with, you know, what we can consider outsiders, you know, or organizations that work with other games but not fighting games. So that was all of. There's so much to talk about, and I'm glad we are talking about this. It's just a lot of misunderstanding. So as years progress, some organizations made it a point to reach out to community leaders in the fighting game space, which that was the right thing to do. And then slowly every year we're like, hey, this is what the FGC wants. They want more matches, right? They want knowledgeable casters, and they want a grassroots feel. They want the hype. You know, they want all of these things showcased on the broadcast. We don't want it to look like golf. We're not golf.
Right.
You know, right? We are the football of honestly, the fighting games is the fighting games of every genre. But like, if you look at it in the sports aspect, like esports does all the time, we're the football.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
We are the main sport to watch. Just is because it's so easy to understand. So now that, you know, we have Capcom heavily involved in the esports initiative, and they're hiring their own, right? You know, we have FGC members that are working with Capcom to make it happen. You know, we have Fidel, we have Combo Fiend, right? We have the production crew that has been working with many events, you know, alongside the pro tours that are already embedded with the FGC. And here we are today. Like, they've asked us to take care of the Capcom Pro Tour online segment, and our casters are already FGC. So all these things are finally coming out to where it feels like we're in the right place now, and esports is now being more accepted because it's coming in with the FGC flavor, not everybody else's flavor but ours. So the progress is going well. We're not completely there yet, and some people are not sold on the whole esports thing, and I totally understand. But in order for the players, the event organizers, and the publishers, it's got to be a nice ecosystem of all these moving parts to really sustain themselves, and of course the fans, right? Support all of this, to go to the events, to purchase a subscription, or even to donate to their favorite players. Like, all these pieces, once they're in a nice ecosystem, then esports can positively flourish into the community. So it's a work in progress, but I'm glad more and more people are starting to accept it. So
wow, man, that's probably one of the best responses that I've ever heard, you know, because I thought initially you were just going to go one direction, but you touched on everything. You kind of touched on some of the apprehensions. You gave good and valid points as to why some may be, you know, a little standoffish. Then you also explained why, you know, there is progress. It's like we always had a blueprint, and as we were building, we started making modifications along the way. So I really like the fact that you elaborated thoroughly on that. And so speaking of, you know, having that right formula, right? ELEAGUE, you were there, man. And
I was.
I had the pleasure of speaking to like a few of the people behind the scenes. Christina is one of them, and she said a lot of the things that you said. You know, we're willing to learn. You know, we don't know it all. We may have the resources, but we know guys like, you know, yourself and those that are within the FGC are the ones that have the knowledge base. They're the ones that know what's going on and how things should look and feel, etc. So I'm just going to start off generally and just ask you, what is your experience on? What do you think of ELEAGUE thus far? It's still ongoing.
Well, ELEAGUE, they've been extremely humble through this entire experience. I think what they have is amazing, because just about the points that I covered, they reached out to our own. They reached out to some of the most notable casters, analysts that we have in the game today. Them working with Capcom, of course, they know us. They know what the community wants, but it's just going to take steps to get there. So like, even the invitations, right? Of course, there was a big uproar of, you know, certain people not being invited, you know, right? And some people being invited that maybe it wouldn't have belonged. But you know what? At the end of the day, it turned out to be great TV. Yes. So we call it. It turned out to be great. Like, you know, I think everybody that was invited was a great choice. It's just the community, now that, you know, we're full steam ahead, we got the Pro Tour, everything has to be top notch. We have to have the best players in the world at every single event. But, you know, this is a new type of show. This is going to be on TV. This is going to be, this is not necessarily all for the hardcore. This is going to be for people that do not know what Street Fighter is, or have some kind of a nostalgic, you know, emotional attachment with the game that they can never go back to, because now they're all grown up. So we have to reintroduce the scene with predominantly the top players, and then some members of the community that have been around and supported the scene and have given back. So like, I think it was a great addition there. The way that the ELEAGUE took care of us, you know, like taking us, flying us to the event itself. Making sure the players are taken care of at the hotel, providing them food. You know, just giving them the what's going on, and $250,000 for the prize pool. I mean, if you know what, if we want to see our players continue to do work and show us amazing games, that prize pool is gonna motivate them to do it. You know what I mean? And I mean, this is what the fans want. They want to see, like, right now, all the people that weren't supposed to be there are kind of like, you know, already eliminated, or surprisingly enough, they're in there, and you know, they're making their mark. So and the direction where the analyst desk is, you know, Richard Lewis is an amazing, I would call him a moderator, but the host of the desk, because it makes our jobs easier. I just see the new skills of how Sajam, Rip, Z, and Tasty Steve are bouncing off each other. With Richard Lord in place, it makes it much easier, especially when I was on there. I mean, I've been in front of the camera a lot, but it's different when you're on TV, right? It's a different thing.
Cameras are big, man. You had to be there.
So having him kind of like, you know, ask me a question, kind of like an interview piece, and made it much easier to flow back without like interrupting the analyst flow of what's going on in the desk. So I think they're doing things right, and they're constantly taking feedback. So like, you know, it's not like, hey, we heard you, and then communications are off. They're constantly like replying and trying to, you know, be on top of these generation of players today, because today's generation of players and spectators is so demanding because of social media. So I mean, I'm glad the more communication, the better.
Absolutely, man. Shout outs to Richard, man. He does an amazing job. Like I see him every week when I go out there, and I say, man, it's like you guys grew up with each other. That's how much the chemistry is just amazing. And you know, the last time, it was just this Friday that passed when I was there. Like I actually sat like in the bleachers area with the media people, and I kind of glanced at you, man. There was a moment where I think it was during the recording, you had this look on your face, man. It was similar to like a parent looking at a child hit a milestone. I don't know if you remember that. I'm probably sure you had those moments a lot throughout the entire event, but it was this look of like just being in this place, like, you know, how did this happen? You know, like, wow, we made it. Like, I'm pretty sure that might have come across your mind more than once, but can you describe the feeling, man? Like, it seemed like you were fully in that moment, if you know what I'm talking about. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I made it a point to, because as a caster or an analyst, because my business partner, Jimmy Wynn, he trains and produces all of our shows as the lead organizer, right? And he always trains us, including myself, on how we should present ourselves in front of the camera, right? And we get our practice from like Wednesday Night Fights and all of our other productions put together. That we have to choose a direction. If we are the color commentator, if we are the analyst, or if we are the prominent figure, you know, of course, I'm taking the prominent figure route, but my direction was speak from the heart, right? We are here. We are here, and every player that made it, like we are celebrating their efforts, right? And you know, we're taking everything to heart now. So like we are so excited to see the best of the best going at it, and me giving my feedback on what I see, and you know, I have the honor of like saying like what they should work on, right? Because they're gonna take it to heart too, because I know some of the players do look up to me still, even though they can like turn me over in the game of Street Fighter today, but they also take these you know, what I say to heart, just because they know that I've been through it. You know, I've been through it at such a young age, going up to seeing them, you know, taking the helm now. And I'm just moving forward with that as one direction. But like, if I was invited back, now that I know what to expect, I can kind of put a bit more of my personality to edge on these players, to get more excited, and you know, and just to loosen them up too, because I do feel a sense of like, man, it's super stressful, and you can feel it in the room. These guys are just like, I played in all these premier events around the world, but when I'm on TV, it's like, oh man, I gotta loosen up this tie if I can, and it's just the tension is at a all new high, and I was on the stage with them, so I know exactly how it feels. So I think the more that they're on stage like that, and the casters can kind of like loosen them up a bit, I think we're gonna see them more of their personalities come out too.
Absolutely, man. So that's good, man. I'm glad that you were a part of that experience, and like you said, hopefully it keeps on going. From everyone that I spoke to, it seems like they're interested in keeping this going too. So and if they do, of course they got to have you back. Absolutely. So now. Uncle Valle, man, that's a moniker and term that everyone kind of uses when it comes to you. And even though, like you said, a lot of people look up to you, I just want to know, like, who were some of your influences? Who were some of the people that might have been a mentor or just been something that you looked at and said, man, I can learn from this person? And it doesn't have to necessarily be someone older, but I just want to know, who were some of the people that really helped you?
Oh man, the list is the list is super long.
Right.
But I can talk, of course, in my playing days. I gotta give the shout outs to the guys that introduced me to the top players. Tao Duong, which introduced me to Mike Watson, which I met Jeff Schaefer, and like those were like the prominent figures and the OGs for me, right? I mean, there's so many more in that generation. Of course, the Cannons, for inviting the world, internet-wise, to Battle by the Bay. Right. Jason Wilson, which he ran one of the longest-running Midwest Championship events, and also the Alpha 3 World Championships. He was greatly involved in that. There was a lot of stuff that he did behind the scenes at those times that were esports-like, but he definitely deserves credit. John Balon, SHGL boss, was the arcade operator. The manager of the arcade that I played at, that got me the job there at a young age.
Okay.
Yeah, and so those were the young generation, right?
Right.
John Choi, of course, too, my rival. But like moving forward, I mentioned him already. Jimmy Nguyen, my business partner, right? Like he's been around with me even back in the Southern Hills Golfland days. And when we founded the business together, Level Up, he was pretty much kind of like coaching me and saying, hey, this is what you can and should not and could not say on camera and social media, right? Because I was still in the whole like grassroots trying to get everybody in the way I usually like talk, but I gotta be more. I gotta articulate it better, right? Which I'm improving. And he's been around to make sure that like the company image, of course, and then what I want to say makes sense, right? Because he's definitely in the he does a lot of the back end stuff, so he doesn't really get so much of the shine, but he does really influence the way that business is done. And I'm saying this in grown-up ways, man. Is that we're not in the 90s anymore. So we got to make sure that people understand this. And of course, all the tournament leaders out there, in the East Coast, even though that we've had our rivalry grudges in the past, they've inspired me to run events as well as the company too. Like my business partners are influenced with them too. So all the TLs out there that have been running events before we even started, hats off to you guys, and all the players as well. Like you got the players, even the young players today inspire me because they're doing things at such a young age the right way, right? I see them promoting themselves, talking about fighting games in the positive light, and not letting the negativity get down on them so much. Even though everybody has an opinion these days, they're some of them are handling it better than others. So we're it's a work in progress. But shout outs to all of you guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So Man, it's like a well-oiled machine. You know, Uncle Valle comes with a whole crew of different people that do different things to make you who you are. And I'm glad that you were able to show some gratitude with that long list. And I'm sure there's a lot more that we don't have the time to like literally name. But you know, speaking of some of the things that you do, you know, Level Up series, Wednesday night fights. You're still involved with SCR, correct?
Oh, of course, yes.
And
SCR.
So,
yes.
Yeah, I want you to touch on that. Well, let me ask this question. First of all, the tournament scene, right? Do you think that we're in a good place right now? Do we have enough tournaments? Is there too many tournaments, or should we even do a little bit more? Like, where do you stand with that?
As a player, you can never say there's too many tournaments. You can and you can and you cannot. Okay. Because what if that tournament series is no longer there? That's gonna affect somebody. Yeah. It is. It's gonna affect somebody. But on the flip side, having so many tournaments, you're like, oh, now I got to pick and choose. But look, we are not in a position, in my opinion, to say like we have too many tournaments, because we don't fill all these tournaments yet. Right. We don't. We're still trying to like get more people to come out to play, and it's getting harder because online is getting better, right? You know, we have these amazing online tournaments, and just the younger generation, is harder for them to afford going even to weekly events or traveling to majors, right? They can only go to 1 or 2. It's really tough. So it's you know, I just think that everybody that has a great innovative idea that they can bring to the table in the tournament scene, that's gonna always help us, versus not having it at all. Right. So that's kind of like my take on it. But I guess in regards to like being part of a tour, they you know, last year there was too many. I can say that there was too many events. Yeah, it was because it was very hard to understand, very hard to follow, right? And this year, you know, Capcom has made an attempt and made adjustments to kind of trim the amount of events out there, just for them to make it you know, more sense for people to follow the tour. Got it. Yeah, you know, and I think they're going to continue to kind of see where everything goes with the amount of people that are able to go to these events and take it from there. So and you know, even though they trimmed the amount of offline events, they increase the amount of online events. Wow. So that's interesting. There's instead of 8, there's 16 now. Yeah. Right. So it does give more opportunities for players that can't really make it out. Yeah. That is for them. And you know, we've worked really hard you know, separating the regions now too, so it helps the online experience. So you don't have to play Cali to New York matches, right? Now you're playing Cali up to Texas, you know, and that's a pretty fair trade-off now. Yeah. You know, and it does help for better matches. So we're gonna see better matches on stream nowadays, and we get to crown regionally top scorers from each of these events, which is gonna be awesome.
Wow, that makes sense. You know, a lot of sense. And so now let's touch a little bit on some of the events that you are part of, man. As an experienced TO and someone that has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the FGC, what would you say is probably like the biggest hurdle when it comes to running a tournament?
Ooh, that would be, okay, so there's many ways you can answer this. See, in my position, when we run tournaments like SCR, I'm mainly in charge of like the business aspect to the community outreach and some of the designs, right, of like what good stuff that we're gonna have in there and attractions. But the logistical size and the planning and the whole architecture of bringing this to life, that's all on Jimmy's shoes. Right. So I'll answer it to where like the execution part, I guess, because you know we're all there doing the execution, like setting up all the equipment and showcasing all the stuff. But the hardest part is to figure out how many players are gonna possibly join each tournament. Because we have to really reach out to the community and kind of like see, all right, we can gauge, 400, 500 plus for like Street Fighter. We can gauge Injustice 2's coming out, maybe like another 200, and then we have to allocate those systems and allocate the space, right? So I have to give that information to Jimmy, which he designs the floor plan and just says, hey, we're running out of room here, or we're pretty light here. So it's an ongoing effort with the team to allocate like what is needed on the floor, and if we have more room for like sponsor tables and supporters, like those initial planning, the initial planning process is always challenging. And then moving forward there too is the communication to make sure that the players know what tournaments they're entering, right? How many games are going to be there? Constantly replying to like hundreds of emails and social media posts because they always ask new players. We always have to take care of them, hold them by the hand, and saying, so the entry fee is this, and this is what you get out of it. You have access to all 3 days, and a lot of people just kind of like see the end result of the tournament, and they're like, the only thing that you might have trouble with is like, if the stream drops, frame, or like there's a power outage, like the obvious stuff, but it's a lot of stuff to chew before that. So it's the planning process is always that, but taken from a location where we're at, Southern California is notorious for extremely expensive venues. Right, and so that's another thing that we have to balance out, because we really have to budget venue, internet, and if we can afford everything else put together, because we have to front the budget before everything starts, and and hopefully with the venues, that the venue registration helps to pay for the initial cost for it. We have to allocate budget for like the rest, and hopefully some of the partners and supporters help with that, and any additional stuff like the raffles and things to go. So like as long as we're in a sustainable place, it's easier for us to gauge how we're going to take the event. So there's I could speak forever on this on my end, but like Jimmy, I'm sure he would have a bunch of obstacles to discuss with you on the logistics side of it.
No, thank you for elaborating, man. Because like you said, there's the obvious things that people are aware of, the stream dropping, and usually those are things that just maybe only affect them personally. But we don't get to see the stuff you said. Like you have to respond to every email. You can't ignore anything, because like a lot of newcomers are joining or signing up for the very first time. You're trying to accommodate every single person that's going to be attending. And I mean, years ago I threw a little gathering, not an FGC tournament, but it was only about 200 people. And after that I was like, I'm done. I need to retire. I need to go on vacation for 2 months. It was only through 200 attendees, but the stress, the headache, the trouble, the responding, the RSVP. So my hat goes off to you guys, man. I know that you must deal with a lot of different things that we don't get to see. Your conflict resolution skills are probably insane, and a whole bunch of other things. So definitely shout outs to you guys for doing that. And so let me ask this question now, man. What is the most gratifying thing of what you do? The SCR Level Up Series and Wednesday night fights, because I know there has to be something that at the end of the day makes you feel good, or hopefully the end result makes you say, yes, I'm glad that I did this. What is that thing for you?
When a player comes up to us and say thank you for this event, I'm from wherever part of the world, and this is the event I have to look forward to every year. Or Wednesday Night Fights, thank you so much for hosting the event. Like I have something to look forward to coming every week, because I don't know what my Wednesdays would be without this. So and the same for me, like even when like I'm sick or like I actually do have some time off on a Wednesday. If we don't have to run a Wednesday Night Fights, I feel kind of lost, man. I'm like, man, I want to see my peoples. I want to go out there. I want to see what the community is up to, because we only have so much time in our lives. And for some people to come out there and to ride the wave with us, we're always going to cherish that. And we just we just hope everybody has that, you know, they can go home and just say, you know what, I took these pictures from the event, like an SCR, a Vanguard, a Wednesday night fight, show their family, their friends, and say, you know what, if you guys are ever in Southern California, you guys should reach out to Jimmy, Alex, Frank, and see what they could do for you, and showing you the fighting game community down here.
Right,
you know?
right.
So those are like thanks enough, you know, for people that are supporting the event.
Wow. So those kind words and those thankful expressions, they mean so much. They do. I see that.
Yeah,
and, you know, and it's funny that you mentioned that we only have so much time, you know, as far as living. Yeah. And that's why I mentioned that thing I saw you do at ELEAGUE. You had this kind of look, man, like you're just a very appreciative kind of guy that just knows, like, man, you know, I need to enjoy every moment. And that's kind of what I picked up, you know, when I mentioned that look. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as well, because we can take so many things for granted and just keep complaining all day, every day, and miss those valuable moments. And it's only when we look back, we're like, man, that really, you know, that happened, because we're not living in the moment. So speaking of which, what are some of your most treasured moments, you know, nostalgic moments? Like, what are those things that you may probably miss, even if they're never going to come back or return, because, you know, of course, time moves on, things happen and change. What are some of your most treasured moments in the FGC?
Traveling with my peers.
Yeah.
Right? You know, in my heyday, when I traveled to national tournaments, is what we used to call them, you know, the moments to where, like, I'm getting a food run with my you know, with the buddies that I'm going with, and just talking about strategies, talking about what's going on with us, you know. It just really brings us together. Like, I know we're having fun, and there's something that we have a job to do. We got to win that tournament.
Right.
It's the journey there that always gets to me. And even with today, like, planning stuff with you know, my business partners too, is like, you know, how can we make a big impact, right? And how can we improve our events? And on the way to these, like all the meetings that we have together, and if we have time to eat together, because that's something that, you know, I wish we had more time, but like all of our members are super busy. We can just kind of like just go down the line and say, you know, what we did last year is that didn't work, so this is gonna work, and then we just we feel happy that we can give back and have ideas and share it together. That it's going to definitely make some kind of an impact, or just improve what we have, and then keep it going. Because at any time, you know, it can be rough for any player, any organization. You shouldn't take this for granted, because, you know, somebody can have an unfortunate, you know, event happening. Like, if you have, you know, power outages, you know, equipment failure and all this stuff, and then the stuff that you have planned, it just goes down the tubes, and you plan really hard, and hopefully you don't take it too much to heart, but it just is what it is, you know. And that's why I have the utmost respect for all the tournament organizers, all the players that have been saving up their life savings to go to these events. And they know some of them aren't even the best players, but they don't care. They just want to play others, and and the tournament organizers are the ones that have cultivated the scenes to make it feel welcome, and you know, something that they can be a part of, regardless of age, you know, race, anything. That doesn't even matter. We're always here for you. Man,
that's so true. And man, that's you know, it's crazy, because, like, again, I'm just mainly a spectator. You know, I've been attending events since I moved down here in Atlanta back in '09. I went to final round, and I did some interviews back in the day about 6-7 years ago with some of the players, and I was always impressed about what you guys say, like the ones that are heavily involved in the scene, that are traveling and things like that. You always seem to share this kind of similar appreciation for what the FGC is. And of course, you're going to always have, you know, a few rotten apples or a few people who come in and out the scene, and they're not necessarily contributing. However, for the most part, I will say that the FGC has been on a constant, you know, positive trajectory and growing. And I would like to hear your thoughts. I'm sure you get this question all the time as well. Like, where the FGC was, where it is, and where it's going. Like, where, can you kind of touch on that a little bit? And maybe what you would hope for the FGC, or where would you like to see it go?
Yeah, this is a very common question too. I really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's just, I just hope for when you guys are watching this interview that we did, me and a lot of the old school cats, we did all the hard work in the beginning and like spending our life savings to make sure that the integrity of all these things that we're doing, like the event organization, what a player wants in a tournament, right? Even giving feedback back to like the canons to like say, hey, how could Evo improve and stuff?
Right.
All these things are set in place to where we are today, right? Like I'll give you a big example. It's like when I was invited with John Choi to Japan for the rematch with Daigo.
Yeah.
They try to give us bat tops, the old arcade bat top controllers, joystick on a Japanese cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work out, right? Like the bat top kind of like just fell over, and so like if we didn't do these things, how could we prepare for an international, right? International showcase where we eventually just provided a Japanese cabinet versus an American cabinet was probably the best solution at the time. So we did all these things. Evo, innovated with putting consoles on the forefront of the events because they knew that the technology was getting better and it was feasible to run that over lugging all those arcade cabinets, right?
Right.
Some of the young organizations out there and established ones picking up some of the sponsored players, they're finally getting to understand what the FGC players are like versus the other genres. So there's more understanding of what their wants and needs are, because their wants and needs are guaranteed are very, very different than other genres, and it's just the way it is. So all of these steps progressing the scene to a more, if you don't want to call it esports, or you don't like the word, fine, but you cannot deny that the scene is progressing into something better.
Yes.
It's giving the organizations some partner with publishers to help sustain help with some of the costs in certain portions of the event.
Right.
More players are starting to attend the events. There's something for the players to look forward to, like the Capcom Cup at the end of the year. That is a huge cash prize.
Oh yeah.
Right. That is a life-changing scenario for you. Right?
I interviewed Knuckle Do at final round, and that guy couldn't stop smiling. He was like, So like it's. I can't help but to think back, like, man, if there was a Capcom Cup when I was 18 years old, you would have been set, man. Before
I would be alongside with, like, I think at the time Thresh and Fatality were the biggest pro celebrities. I would be right alongside with them, be like, what's up, right? It's all about Cali, right? It's all about Cali at the time, right? Like driving, my hoopty or something. But anyways, but now it's just, there's so many things to look forward to, and I just, my best advice for you guys is just, put your constructive criticism to all of this. But then again, there's just people working really hard to get what you want. Trust me, I know exactly what you guys want. But in order to get there, there's baby steps. And now that we've actually grown past some of the baby steps to where we're on national television, it's about acceptance. So in the invitational is one type of show. Right? There could be another invitational. It could be a totally different show. Tournaments could be different. As long as you're more accepting and adjusting to opportunities. Right? That's the key word here is opportunity. Getting more people involved, different eyeballs to see it too, because they're not all the casual audience is gonna care about the tournaments. They just like they're gonna look at the beginning, and there's like no story to tell, because how we have it right now is just match, commentator, match, commentator, match. Like it's just bing bang bang. There's there's no story to be told until we're at the finals, where there is some production put behind it to find out who the players are, but it's still not enough. So just just watch out for new type of shows that are coming. Maybe more events are going to be on TV. That would be awesome if some of the premier events are showcased on TV one day, and not just Evo. And then Evo is turning to be like, it's already the biggest thing. But what's next? We can only imagine what's next for Evo. We don't even know yet this year, so it's gonna be awesome. And the Capcom Cup, like, how's it gonna be featured this year? So it's a lot of things coming, and the Red Bull Proving Grounds events too, which is establishing a presence for the local players in highly populated gaming areas. So. Just a lot of great stuff to look forward to, guys.
Very interesting, man, because I met with quite a few players at final round, and when I asked them the question about the FGC, where it's going, where would they like to see it, they all said bigger, more. Bigger. So I guess you kind of agree, right? Bigger definitely, at least in this case, can be better, right? More.
More definitely. But then again, it's what makes sense too. Right? If we're going to shoot for the stars pretty soon, if we're not already there yet, partnering with the right people and hopefully the organizations too, like ELEAGUE. If there were more organizations as understanding to accept us of who we are and how we can make their show fun, you're gonna get the best. Like, we're the most dedicated scenes out there. Fighting game guys, we go out, even if they're no good, they'll come out and play. They'll come out and play versus just watch and just chill. It's such an incredible community to be a part of.
Oh man, it certainly is. And again, man, you are definitely one of the OGs. In fact, I'll say you're a triple OG. OG as an original gamer. Let me make that clear. You're like one of those old school guys that've been around for forever, doing your thing. Now I know you kind of gave already. You gave some recommendations and some suggestions, but specifically to the new schoolers, like the newer generation, like the Smugs, the Punks, the Knuckle Dudes, maybe even younger. What are some things that you would give as a piece of advice to keep doing what they're doing and to also avoid pitfalls and things of that nature? Like, what are some of your, share some gems with them, if you will.
Have short and long-term goals with what you're doing. Short-term, learning a trade skill, right? If you're not already in school, please always make time for some sort of education, right? This is only going to help you in the future, because the long term is developing your brand, right? Your brand, what you're doing with this, right? Like, maybe Knuckle Do, right? For example, maybe he can hold a higher position at the organization that he's at as a senior consultant, advisor, coach in the future, if he wants to pursue that route, or if he wants to work for like a publisher, right? Like, I can give my insights on the game of Street Fighter or any fighting game, because I have the accolades to back it up. Anybody that is winning the events now, right? Invest in your money, right? Don't splurge on stuff that's not going to help your long term. Always think about the long term, but in order to get to the long term, you have to define your short term, which is you learning special skill sets, right? You're networking. You're always meeting new people, finding opportunities to make this even better. Right? Like, of course, like, just in layman's term, if you're a top player, you want to make more money, you invite more people to the party to take their money, right? That's just the way that you would look at it, right?
Keeping it real.
If you're right. So, but here's the thing, like, they're gonna love it too, because they're gonna come in and they might be able to take your money, and that's gonna even impress the populace even more. And it could happen. It could happen. I think this is the year of the online warrior. Believe me, we're gonna see so much talent that we've yet to hear from. They're gonna make their mark, and Knuckle Do, Punk, Vagabond. That's only the beginning. It is only the beginning. We're gonna see a lot more of that.
You're right, man. Like a lot of those guys that you just named, they just kind of came out of nowhere. It's not like they had a long history of winning tournaments. We were not really paying them any mind or attention, and then boom, just out of nowhere, they're like the guy to watch out for. So you're right. Anyone can. I think that's part of the beauty of the FGC, man. Like you can just be a quote unquote nobody or random in your local area. You sign up, you beat a few names, next thing you know, you're talked about all over the place. So it's like it's a wide open opportunity for people who do have enough of a proper skill set to go ahead and make a name for themselves. But I absolutely like what you said about some of the recommendations to think ahead, plan your future, because esports, just like in real sports or physical sports rather, a lot of those guys, when they retire, they become casters, they become involved in behind the scenes. So what you said is key. It really makes a lot of sense. And so just a couple more questions. It wouldn't be right if I didn't touch on Street Fighter 5. You're Mr. Street Fighter, man. You got Daigo playing Guile, and you're playing Rashid. What's going on with Ryu? Like let's touch on that. What's going on, please?
Okay, there is no secret that Ryu in season 2 is just not. He's just not there like season 1. The characters that got buffed are too strong in a way where it just, for Ryu's nerfs, just doesn't make sense to compete with. Right. So Ryu can't really punish you well. His standing light kick is short range. His jumping light kick is also nerfed. It doesn't hit in that ridiculous hitbox in the air. Damage reduction, and he doesn't have follow-ups after a throw. Right. I know they reduce throw loops and different ways to make it unfair for continuous knockdown scenarios, but Ryu is just affected the most out of that, and there's just other characters that can achieve much more success. And in the case for Daigo has always been about control. Right. He wants to be able to play both offensively and defensively. And with fireballs, punishing, reacting. Very, very textbook, and the highest level of textbook. Like pretty much the god that written the scriptures on how to do this, right? And for him to play Ryu just doesn't make sense. It's just Guile controls everything that he is known for. So it's just a better fit. And for me, I didn't actually like Ryu in season 1, even though he was strong. I just went to Rashid because you know what? I made it a point to play a Street Fighter 5 character because I want to play Street Fighter 5. I think it's a game that you can't totally play traditionally. You have to play it in the way the system kind of forces you to. Crush counter system, right? Being able to jump multiple times, and you know what? One of them's gonna land. Kind of being a lot more active and getting things across. And my style is rush down, so it only fits. It's only fitting with Rashid that I'm able to have so much mobility and strike fear into players' minds, because when I trap you in a corner with that character, that's where he shines the most. And that's kind of where I'm developing my short and long term, right? Because I'm still looking forward to the new characters that are coming out. Like for instance, I'm trying out Colleen right now. She's not a very, Alex Valle character, but she plays Street Fighter 5 in such a weird way. She kind of changes the meta a little bit. And it's so interesting what you said about you pick Rashid because you want to play Street Fighter 5. It seems obvious, but that's something that I haven't heard a lot of people say. It's kind of like playing Street Fighter 4, but you're
playing it with the mindset of Third Strike, or you're playing a completely different game, but you're complaining about it with, because of a previous game's mechanics. And that's something, again, it sounds obvious, but not a lot of people, including myself, I'm guilty of it, really think about it and say, you know what, this is a different game.
Yep.
FADC, all that other stuff, we got to move on and adapt, and that's a really good key point. And so speaking of which, got to put you on blast a little bit. What are your thoughts about the game right now overall? I mean, I think Ada is like the only guy I interviewed that actually sounded like he enjoys the game, and I couldn't tell if he was trolling or not. But what do you think about Street Fighter V overall? And if you really don't like it, or if you think it's not really good, what are some suggestions to make it that solid game we all want?
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I liked Season 1 a lot. I did. Okay. And I think a lot of other players do like Season 1 better than Season 2. It's just, you can be crazy as more. There was just a lot more opportunities with the tools that you had in Season 1, just being so vicious and crazy. In Season 2, they try to contain some of the crazy, right? They increase the amount of frames for a lot of the moves across the board. They reduce the damage, right? Because they're trying to stabilize the game, and I get that. But the characters that got buffed or left alone, they're a bit too strong. Now they have the tools that they struggled with in Season 1. They don't have to worry about anymore, because they were already pretty good in Season 1. But now either they got buffed or left alone. Versus like a character like Ryu got severely nerfed, right? Or like Fang or Alex, and then when you do that to the game, then it shifts the focus to where those top tier characters in Season 2 are just a bit too strong. Guile controls the game more so than any character, and he's never been able to do that in Season 1, because you had a character like Amika, Chun-Li, even a Ken can get in there and just run amok, but it's harder for them now. It's much harder. You have a character like Balrog, which can take you corner to the corner, which, he was one of the characters that wasn't fully developed in Season 1, but now that players had enough time with him, he only got that much deadlier. And now they're fully taking advantage of what he can do in this version, with the damage output he can do and the corner carries that he can do, right? So you have to keep in mind of all these things that are just beautiful for those characters. But for everybody else, it's like, I get it. We have to try harder. We got to get better at the game. But when you look at playing Street Fighter V, Street Fighter V rewards you for being able to corner carry someone or having better offense than the other character. It's just the way it is. It's because you're not going to be able to react to everything. Like a dash, a jump in, right? Some people can, like a Shao Hai, but even he gets clipped by like Knuckle Dew's Mika. Like, you can't react to all that stuff. You get mind games and all that stuff. But I think Season 2, to be honest, it's a little bit worse than Season 1, just because if they're trying to make improvements for the game, I think they kind of went backwards. Like they made improvements to a set characters, but for everybody else, they kind of just left them there. And now that like they're probably going back and doing a rebalance for Season 2, shows that they're listening to the community. So hopefully some of our requests are going to be in there to give a fighting chance for the other characters. I know I'm being very PC and very honest about this stuff, but like, look, listen, I don't have to. And this is something that the young cats should understand, the young generation. I don't have to speak in such a vulgar way to express that Season 2 is not the best place for Street Fighter V right now. It's not, right? I can say, oh, this version sucks, they need to improve it. And is that the tone that I have to speak in order for you to understand? Or can I just say, like, look, I'm telling you straight out, Season 2, the way it is right now, is not a great competitive game. I believe that there needs to be a lot more fixing, and Capcom is taking the feedback and respect, because they're delaying the update now. So hopefully, again, that they're gonna make these changes. I can tell you, like, I want Ryu to be better. You guys want Ryu to be better. You guys want Fang, Alex. You want them to be. I want them to be better too.
Right.
Instead of always looking at Guile, Balrog, a Urian or something, and just like always talking about them, because we know that what they have right now, it makes it feel like those are more complete characters than the characters that we want to play with. So
And speaking of characters that we want to play with, I want to ask you: is there any character that has not yet been announced, and we don't know if they're going to be in the game, that you would like to see in the game? I mean, we know that you're Mr. Street Fighter, Ryu, but is there any characters of Street Fighter universe, Capcom universe, that you would just love to see in Street Fighter 5? And if so, who?
Well, in Season 2, they're having the characters that have never been in the Street Fighter universe, at least in the game as a selectable character.
Right.
So I am looking forward to every single one of those.
Okay.
Because remember, I made it a point to play a Street Fighter 5 character and try to play Street Fighter 5. So besides Season 2 characters, I would love to see a Street Fighter 1 character come back. Like a Geki, right? Or an Eagle.
Oh, okay.
Right. I would like to see even characters that we thought were dead come back. They did it with Nash. They did it with, Gouken. Maybe Chun-Li's father can come back, or something like. That would be sick, right? Like, it's just I played Street Fighter for so many different generations that I'm looking forward to new stuff. I mean, I could go back and play Ryu and a Rolento, and the character's always been back. Pick him up, no problem. But part of the fun for me nowadays is to see something new and innovative, because I'm kind of done playing traditional Street Fighter. I want to play the Street Fighter with the new generation. I want to play with what they can put on the table. I want to and one day with a little one that may come down the road.
Little Valle.
A little one, yes. I'll teach him teach him or her traditional Street Fighter, but then I always want to see what they can bring to the table too. Excellent,
man. And so now, just a couple more questions. I want to know, because you did say that you were at one point even a champion in Tekken, and I'm sure that you played a lot of other games. Pretty much every other fighting game that came out. Like most of us, we dibble and dabble in them, and we may just move on, or maybe we do play them, but we're not that skilled, so we don't talk much about them. I would like to know, what is your favorite fighting game of all time?
Oh no, that's really hard, because different eras had different games in the place of my heart. So I would say I'll tell you in the eras.
Okay, that's
so
good.
Street Fighter 2 era, Hyper Fighter, and Super Turbo. Okay, it's like a tie for me, because Hyper Fighter is before the Supers, and it was the last purest Street Fighter 2 that was there. Right, and then Super Turbo just took it to the crazy limits of what Street Fighter 2 can produce. So that's that. Alpha 2, obviously my all-time favorite, because it's the game that put me on the map. And I've innovated that game to greater lengths. So Yep. Third Strike was obviously my favorite. Street Fighter 3. That's the game that it took Japan to really inspire us on how to play that game, because that's Japan's game. The way that they played that, it was just blew our minds, right? So that's the game that we always had to try to keep up with them to put on a good showing. Then that motivated some of the old guards to keep playing it. Street Fighter 4, to be honest, that's like the greatest game as the resurgence of the scene. Honestly, because of Street Fighter 4, everybody watching this interview, I mean, it brought you back. It wasn't Street Fighter 3 that brought you back. It wasn't the Alpha series that brought you back. It was Street Fighter 4 that brought everybody back. Now, out of the Street Fighter 4s, I would have to say Super Street Fighter 4 was my favorite of those ones. But Street Fighter 4 itself, as it truly just again, for loss of words.
Yeah.
You know, we're back. The FGC is back.
Yes.
And well, Street Fighter 5 now, you know, we're like I said, we are in a rough spot. I do like the game, but this game has, I think it's a really important game, because now that we're diving into esports, we're crafting the game together.
Yeah.
You know, Capcom is learning. We're learning what we want, what we don't want, and you know, hopefully with whichever season they make it to where we see that, hey, now we're in the right spot, then they can probably add the bells and whistles, right? I think that's in my opinion, that's what Capcom should do. Like, when the system mechanics is right, the frame data is right, the balancing is right with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Then they can think about adding other modes with it, because if it's not right and they add other modes, it's going to be still a cluster and hard to balance still with stuff that is still left out.
Right.
So, you know, till we get that, we'll be at a better spot, and you know, I can assure you, like, the opportunities are coming, man. Like, just more stuff with online. Hopefully one day we can purchase community logos, right? That we can put them on our characters or on the stages, right? The things that we want, all the bells and whistles. Like, we're gonna get there, but hopefully Capcom can listen to us and help craft the game to be at a great spot where we want it, where it deserves to be.
Absolutely, man. And so 30 years of Street Fighter. 2017 marks the 30th year anniversary of Street Fighter. What does that mean to Alex Valle? What does Street Fighter mean to Mr. Street Fighter?
Well,
what does it mean?
Well, it assures the fans that I'm super old. That are now, but
right.
It's a celebration of family. I've always said that Street Fighter is a game that, you know, it brings people together, but it's about the people. The way we learn about it. So the 30th year anniversary of Street Fighter brings all the generations together. And whatever Capcom has planned, I don't know what they have planned, to be honest, guys.
Yeah.
Whatever they have planned, I hope it is to bring us back together once again.
Yeah.
Whichever version of Street Fighter it was that brought you into the scene, so be it. You know, if it was Cross Tekken,
right?
You know, if it was HD Remix,
right.
You know, I know we laugh, but you know what? Because of those games, we have lifers on the scene. Like, they might not like Street Fighter 4, they might not like Street Fighter 5, but they still pay attention to us.
You're right.
They still they follow the scene, and it's because of, like, again, it's because of what Capcom did to bring something special to the fan. And that's just community love right there. And then from then on, it's a huge family ordeal. And the more that the world can see that, the more accepted we are bringing these events, these tournaments, these invitational showcases together. It's gonna be like the soccer, right? Or the Olympics of what we have today. So
wow. Okay. And final question, and I'm I'm going to give you the spotlight for this. You can elaborate as much as you like, because when you speak, people listen, man, especially in the community. So what do you think is the most important thing that we can do as a whole to ensure that the FGC continues to grow and stay strong as a community?
Just always post your experiences, right? Every day we're social media, but if there is something about a game that you're playing, share it, right? The more that you talk about what's going on in the world of fighting games, the more that we're going to prosper, because all these, like, what gets us excited is to, come on, we get out of bed, we look at our phone, we go through our mentions, right? All right, and we see, like, oh, that's a dope combo video. Oh, damn, this event is coming up. Oh, wow, like, Daigo's gonna be at this event. Like, all these things that you guys post, that I post, it gets us excited. So the more that you guys do this, I guarantee you somebody's gonna pay attention to that. They're gonna like it. They're gonna favorite it. They're gonna message you. They're gonna DM you, and you're going to see what the community is about.
Absolutely.
And that's what I look forward to. with all the events that you know, our team at Level Up produces, right?
Yeah.
You know, with the teams of other TOs, what Capcom produces, or any other fighting game organization, company, publisher, Twitch, you know, everybody that has our backs. We're excited for all the news that you bring us, so please have at it.
Oh man, excellent. Well, what a way to wrap it up, man. Again, I definitely want to thank you for sitting down and chopping it up with us. I know it's been a little longer than I expected, but you know what? People are going to listen, trust me, man. And again, we have the man, the myth, the legendary Mr. Street Fighter himself, Alex Valle. Certainly want to thank you so much. Appreciate this.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yes, sir. We're signing out.